The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of quiet, hesitant knock that assumes you might not answer. I was at the kitchen counter, hands wet, soap still on the plate, the smell of lemon detergent sharp in the air. For a second, I thought it might be a delivery I'd forgotten about. Then the knock came again, slower this time, and something in my chest tightened before my mind caught up. When I opened the door, she was standing there with a small overnight bag and eyes that didn't know where to land. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, face pale in a way that wasn't just from the cold. The hallway light buzzed faintly above us. She looked smaller than I remembered, not fragile, just reduced. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. The words sat between us unfinished. I noticed the smell first. Hospital soap and old perfume clinging to her coat. Somewhere behind me, the sink continued to drip. I didn't invite her in right away. Not because I was angry. Because my body hadn't decided yet what it was allowed to feel. My name is Thomas. I'm 34 years old. I work as a municipal planner, which means I spend my days thinking about long timelines, consequences, and what happens when people build things without accounting for stress. I used to believe marriages were like that too. Structures you maintain, inspect, reinforce before anything collapses. She had left 8 months earlier. Packed a suitcase while I was at work. Left a note on the counter that said she needed something different. I remembered the handwriting, steady, careful, like she didn't want to be misunderstood. I remembered standing in this same doorway that night, listening to the building settle, the city outside indifferent to the sudden absence inside my life. I knew about him. Everyone did. He worked in sales, drove fast cars, talked in absolutes. She'd said his name too easily in the weeks before she left. I'd noticed and told myself noticing wasn't the same as accusing. That trust meant restraint. 2 weeks ago, a mutual friend had called. Voice low. Awkward pauses. A car accident on the highway just outside the city. Rain. A barrier hit too fast. He didn't survive. I remembered hanging up and standing very still, the way you do when you don't know which reaction is appropriate yet. Now she was here. "I need help," she said, finally meeting my eyes. "Just for a little while." I stepped aside and let her in. The apartment smelled like coffee and clean laundry. Familiar. She set the bag down near the door like she'd done 100 times before. Muscle memory doesn't ask permission. She moved into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly. "I don't know how to do this alone," she said. "Everything feels wrong." I stood across from her, noticing details I hadn't expected to notice. The dark circles under her eyes, the way her knee bounced once and then stilled, like she was trying to control it. There was grief there. Real grief. I didn't doubt that. "I thought you'd understand," she added softly. "After everything we shared." A memory drifted in without warning. Us in this same room years earlier, painting the walls, music playing too loud, her laughing as she smeared paint on my arm. Another memory followed, her back turned as she zipped her suitcase, saying she couldn't breathe in this life anymore. They overlapped uncomfortably, like two images refusing to separate. I brought her a glass of water, set it on the table. She drank it in small sips, hands shaking just enough to be noticeable. "I'm not asking for much," she said. "Just until I get back on my feet. You've always taken care of things. Of me." There it was. Not spoken with entitlement. Spoken with assumption. Outside, a car passed, tires hissing on damp pavement. The late afternoon light slanted through the window, catching dust in the air. I realized then that she hadn't asked how I'd been. Hadn't asked what her leaving had done to me. She'd arrived already inside a story where my role was unchanged. I sat down across from her, feeling the weight of the moment settle fully now. Not anger. Not vindication. Clarity. She believed this was a return to something paused, not ended. She believed grief had reset the rules. She never imagined how I would respond. And for the first time since the door opened, I knew exactly what I was not going to do. That evening moved slowly, like the apartment itself was unsure how to behave with her back inside it. I made soup because it was easy and didn't require conversation. The pot simmered softly, releasing the smell of onions and broth, something domestic and unthreatening. She sat at the table, shoulders hunched, staring into her phone without really looking at it. "I don't have an appetite," she said when I set a bowl in front of her. "That's fine," I replied and sat across from her with my own. The spoon clinked once against the ceramic. Loud in the quiet. She watched me eat for a moment, then spoke. "The hospital said I should be around familiar people. For stability." She said it carefully, like she was quoting someone else. "They said routine helps." I nodded, not committing to anything. Outside, rain started again, light at first, tapping the window in uneven rhythms. I remembered nights when that sound had meant comfort. Her curled beside me, the shared understanding that we were sheltered from whatever was happening out there. "I don't know how long I'll need," she added. "Just until things make sense again." Another assumption. Time, like space, already allocated. A memory drifted in without warning. The night she told me she was leaving. We'd sat right where we were now. Same table. Same chairs. She'd said she felt like she was disappearing. That she needed to feel alive again. I'd listened, steady, asked questions, offered counseling, space, time. She'd already made her decision. Back then, she hadn't worried about how long I'd need. After dinner, she went to shower. I stood at the sink, washing the 2 bowls, listening to the water run, letting the sound ground me. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered. Not broken. Sharper around the edges. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she hesitated like she used to. "Is it okay if I take the bedroom?" she asked. "I'm exhausted." The question sounded polite. The expectation beneath it was familiar. "I'll set up the guest room," I said. She paused. "You don't have to do that. We're married." The word hung there, heavier than it used to be. "We're separated," I replied evenly. She looked at me like I'd spoken too loudly. "After everything that's happened, you're really going to make this about labels?" I folded a blanket carefully, aligning the edges. "I'm making it about reality." She didn't argue. She took the bedroom and closed the door. The click of the latch felt definitive. I lay awake later, staring at the ceiling in the guest room, listening to the apartment breathe. Pipes shifted. A siren wailed briefly and faded. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand. A message from a mutual friend, careful and indirect. I heard she came back. "You doing okay?" I didn't answer. In the morning, she was already up, moving quietly through the kitchen, like she didn't want to disturb me. Like courtesy might substitute for acknowledgement. The smell of coffee filled the room. She'd made it the way I liked without asking. "I thought we could talk today," she said, placing a mug in front of me. "About next steps." "Okay," I said. She exhaled, relief flickering across her face. "I just need some time to grieve," she continued. "I can't handle logistics right now. Paperwork. Decisions. You've always been good at that." I wrapped my hands around the mug, felt the warmth seep into my palms. "I'm not going to manage this for you," I said quietly. Her head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm not your caretaker," I said. "Not anymore." Her expression shifted. Confusion first, then something closer to disbelief. "I just lost someone," she said. "How can you be so cold?" The accusation landed, but it didn't stick the way it might have once. "I'm not cold," I replied. "I'm honest." She stood abruptly, chair legs scraping the floor. "I thought you'd be different," she said. "I thought you'd show compassion." "I am," I said. "Just not at my own expense." She turned away, hands pressed to the counter, shoulders tense. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, like the walls had leaned in to listen. In that moment, I understood something clearly. She hadn't come back because she'd chosen me. She'd come back because she'd run out of places where responsibility was optional. And for the first time since she'd walked through my door, I felt the line between us settle into place. Quiet, firm, immovable. The tension didn't explode. It thickened. The day stretched on with the kind of heaviness that makes even simple tasks feel deliberate. She stayed in the bedroom most of the morning, door half closed, the low murmur of a phone call leaking out now and then. I worked from the dining table, laptop open, emails answered carefully, professionally. The contrast felt surreal. Budgets and zoning requests on my screen, grief and expectation behind the door. Around noon, she emerged wearing jeans and a sweater I recognized. Mine, originally. She paused when she saw me, as if deciding which version of herself to present. "I talked to my sister," she said. "She thinks it's best if I stay here for a bit. Somewhere stable." I didn't look up right away. I finished typing the sentence I was on, then closed the laptop. "Your sister doesn't get to decide that," I said. Her mouth tightened. "I'm not asking to stay forever." "That's what you said last time," I replied, surprised at how evenly the words came out. She flinched, just slightly. Then defensive again. That was different. I thought of the way she'd framed leaving as necessary, inevitable, of how quickly she'd found certainty elsewhere. "It's always different when you're the one needing something," I said. She paced the room, arms folded tightly. The floor creaked under her steps. "So what, you're just going to abandon me now?" The word landed with intention. A memory drifted in. Me standing in an empty apartment months ago, listening to her voicemail explaining why she couldn't come back for the rest of her things yet. How I'd slept on one side of the bed, then the other, then the couch. How abandonment had been something I'd learned to carry quietly. "I didn't abandon you," I said. "You left." She shook her head. "That doesn't matter anymore. Things happened." "Yes," I said. "They withheld consequences. Until now." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the person speaking. "You're punishing me for what happened to him." "No," I replied. "I'm refusing to erase what happened to me." Silence settled again. Outside, a garbage truck rumbled past, metal clanging, then moved on. Ordinary life, intruding without apology. In the afternoon, a knock came at the door. A friend of hers, Maya, stood in the hallway, eyes tired, posture already braced for negotiation. She worked in non-profit management, always the fixer, always the bridge. "I just wanted to check in," Maya said carefully. "She's been through a lot." I nodded. "I know." Maya glanced past me, then back. "She thought you'd handle things. Help her get steady." "I'm not refusing compassion," I said. "I'm refusing dependency." Maya hesitated. "You're her husband." "We're separated," I said again. The word seemed to travel faster this time, like it had momentum. After Maya left, my wife sat heavily on the couch, face in her hands. The tears came then, not dramatic, not performative. Real. Her shoulders shook, breath uneven. I watched, feeling the familiar urge to step in, to fix, to absorb. I didn't. "I don't know how to do this alone," she said between breaths. I sat across from her, voice low. "I believe you." She looked up, eyes red. Hope flickered. "But I'm not the person who can do it for you," I continued. Her hope collapsed into something darker. Anger, maybe fear. "So that's it," she said. "You're just done." I thought about the years we'd built, the plans we'd made, the way I'd believed commitment meant endurance. I thought about how easy it would be to step back into the role she was offering me. Caretaker, anchor, reliable ground, at the cost of my own footing. "I'm done pretending this is a reset," I said. "It's a reckoning." She wiped her face, stood, and went back to the bedroom without another word. The door closed softly. No slam. No drama. Just separation reinforced. That night, I drafted an email to a mediator. Then another to my lawyer. Practical steps. Clean lines. I didn't feel cruel. I felt aligned. She slept behind a closed door. I slept in the guest room again, the ceiling unfamiliar but honest. Somewhere in the dark, I understood something she hadn't yet. Grief doesn't undo choice. And love doesn't require self-erasure to prove it's real. The morning she left was quieter than the morning she arrived. No knock this time. No hesitation. Just the soft sound of a suitcase rolling across the floor and the careful opening and closing of drawers. I stayed in the guest room until the apartment settled back into its familiar rhythm, the hum of the refrigerator steady, the distant traffic outside moving on without noticing the shift inside my walls. When I stepped into the kitchen, she was standing by the counter, keys in her hand. Her eyes were tired, red at the edges, but clearer than they'd been since she came back. Grief was still there. So was something else, recognition maybe. "I found a place to stay," she said. "A friend from work." I nodded. "That's good." She lingered, looking around as if the room might offer her one last argument. The coffee machine clicked off behind her, the smell filling the space. She'd made it out of habit again. Muscle memory doesn't vanish just because meaning does. "I didn't think it would be like this," she said finally. "I know," I replied. She swallowed. "I thought, after what happened, you'd understand why I needed you." I leaned against the counter, feeling the cool surface at my back. "I do understand," I said. "That's why I'm not pretending this is something it isn't." She nodded slowly, eyes dropping to the floor. For the first time, she didn't argue. She didn't frame it as cruelty or abandonment. She just accepted the boundary as a thing that existed whether she liked it or not. At the door, she paused, hand on the handle. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were quiet, unadorned. Not a strategy. Not a request. Just an acknowledgement. I believed her. "I hope you heal," I said. And I meant that too. The door closed behind her with a gentle click. No slam. No final look through the window. Just an ending that didn't demand witnesses. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary, listening to the building settle. The air smelled like coffee and clean linen. Familiar. Unchanged. And yet everything was different. In the weeks that followed, life rearranged itself in small, practical ways. Appointments kept. Paperwork filed. A mediator hired. Conversations held without raised voices or dramatics. Friends checked in cautiously, unsure which version of the story they'd been told. I answered where it felt honest. I declined where it didn't. At work, I found myself more decisive, less willing to absorb other people's chaos without question. My supervisor noticed and commented on it once, casually, like it was a natural progression. Maybe it was. Some nights were harder than others. Grief doesn't run on a schedule, and neither does memory. I'd catch the scent of her shampoo in a store aisle or hear a song we used to argue about and feel the ache return, dull but present. I let it come. I let it pass. I didn't build a home for it. What surprised me most was the absence of guilt. I'd expected it to linger, heavy and persistent. Instead, there was a quiet certainty underneath everything else, a sense that I'd finally stopped interrupting my own instincts. I didn't take care of her like nothing had happened. Not because I lacked compassion, but because something had happened. Something that couldn't be undone by tragedy or softened by loss. Choice leaves a mark. Grief doesn't erase it. One evening, standing by the window as dusk settled over the city, I thought about the man she'd left with, about the accident, about how fragile timelines really are. I felt sadness for what had been lost, for all of it. And I felt relief that I no longer had to disappear to keep someone else upright. I turned off the lights and let the quiet fill the apartment, not as loneliness, but as space. Space to breathe. Space to stand where I was without apology. I didn't win. I didn't punish. I didn't save anyone. I simply chose not to abandon myself again. I chose self-respect over rescue.